Today we celebrate the Passion of the Lord, or Palm Sunday. Our Gospel text is Mark chapters 14 and 15. In the Passion narrative, we have a very clear, a very stark presentation of a God who is vulnerable. God, being in the flesh, Jesus, Nazareth, is led like a lamb to the slaughter. We are made in the image and likeness of this vulnerable God. Have you ever thought that being vulnerable is part of the essence of being a fulfilled human being? That is very counterintuitive for Western cultures. We seek fulfillment in the opposite, of being in control. I'm going to suggest to you that this deep primitive desire to be in control is actually an instinct for fascism. And I'd like to suggest we find in Jesus, in this quality of vulnerability, this divine quality of vulnerability, perhaps the primary antidote to the instinct for fascism. I've just been reading a book by Madeleine Albright. She was the US Secretary of State from 1997 to 2001. She'd written a book called Fascism, A Warning. In that book, she makes it clear that she sees in the world today fertile ground for people who want control, who can't stand the complexities and ambiguities of otherness everywhere, that this is a time, unless we're careful, in which fascism will re-emerge. See, human beings are anxious animals, all of us. There's no exceptions. There's an anxiety that belongs to our very existence. We can call it existential anxiety. And as such, we fabricate worlds of meaning and structure where we can keep that anxiety at bay by feeling we are in fact in control. All is well because we are in control. When our control is threatened, if that world that we have built is threatened, the anxiety is awakened. When people's anxiety is awakened, especially in an intense sort of a way and in a mass sort of a way, human beings can be awfully irrational, even absurd, even violent. We need control, some control. We can't just live in a world out of control. How we get control, how we exercise control, and how we maintain control is a huge challenge. And I don't think there's a simple answer to that. But I do think we find in today's gospel, in the vulnerability of God, and the recognition that vulnerability is of the very essence of personhood, that there is there an antidote to what can easily become a very violent and destructive force within us, this instinct for fascism. How well we deal with this instinct is going to be a determining factor in how well we as a human family cope with many of the issues facing us. And one of them is the issue of otherness, which finds a practical manifestation in immigration and refugees. There's mass immigration, mass movement of peoples all around the world, people who are poverty-stricken, destitute, fleeing terrible regimes. And where do they go? Well, they go to the affluent world, mostly the Western world. That can threaten our worlds. That can evoke our anxiety. And we can respond irrationally, absurdly, even violently as a result, as our instinct for fascism is invoked. Rowan Williams, who is perhaps one of the greatest writers in the English language of Christian theology, he was the former, or is the former, primate of the Anglican Church, Archbishop of Canterbury. He wrote a beautiful piece on this, and it's dense, but I'd like to read it and invite you to reflect on it. Williams says, "It is in the cross that we see the revelation of what it is that characterizes God's personal being. And so, what is also possible for us, because we are made in the image and likeness of this personal, infinite, divine being." Williams goes on, "The cross reveals personality or personhood as kenotic." That's from the Greek word kenosis. St. Paul uses that in chapter 2 of his letter to the Philippians when he says his state was divine. He did not cling to his equality with God, but emptied himself. This self-emptying is part of the divine being, the divine personhood incarnate in Jesus Christ. The implication is that if we are to become fully alive as persons, we have to face those instincts within us, the instinct for fascism, to be in control, to keep anxiety at bay. We have to face that, live through it, not react to it. The renunciation, Williams goes on, the renunciation of existing for oneself is our most authentically personal act, and so also our most godlike act. Let me read that again. It is the renunciation of this existing for oneself, of being self-sufficient, utterly independent, the self-made person. It's the renunciation of that and all that's implied by that. That is our most authentically personal act, a self-emptying act, and our most godlike act. That which reminds us that we are made in the image and likeness of a self-emptying God. And so an obvious characteristic of the truly human will be, and here's Williams again, the absence of self-assertive, self-interested individualism. It is interesting in chapter 3 of Genesis, the devil evokes, calls forth from Adam and Eve, from some dark, primitive depths of the human psyche, these very qualities of self-interested, self-assertive individualism. You shall be like gods, he says. When we know, as Jesus knew, that we're held in the embrace of the Father, we can trust his love, his infinite care. That is the best antidote to the instinct for fascism, the instinct to fight those who threaten our fragile, fabricated worlds.